Hello. Hey, this is Warren Redlick. I'm going to leave the glasses on. Hey, this is Warren Redlick. Thank you for coming today. I hope the sound is okay. Looks good on my end. Please just quick sound check. Let me know if everything sounds okay. You can see here, this is the outline. We're going to talk about batteries today. I'm going to talk about batteries today. I'll take questions at the end. So we're going to start by just talking about nickel versus iron. Then we're going to talk about the costs of nickel versus iron, relative costs. We're going to talk about range. Pretty clearly, nickel has more range, iron costs less. I want to talk a little bit about high nickel chemistry versus nickel manganese chemistry. They talked about that at Battery Day very briefly. Yeah, I get Ford commercials too. I get all kinds of other car commercials. You'd think they'd know better. By the way, merch. Check out the merchandise store below. Then I want to go in some depth about iron phosphate, why iron phosphate matters. I think that 1, 2, 3, and 4 are going to spell out why iron phosphate is so important. And then I want to talk about the videos I'm going to be doing this week. I'm going to start talking about, first I'm going to talk about Cybertruck, then I'm going to talk about my projections for 2022, and then we'll talk a little bit about 2030. And then the last thing, just a video I did earlier this week was about CyberCabin. I wanted to talk about that a little bit, get some reaction from people online. So iron phosphate matters. I like it. Maybe that could be a thing. So the first thing is just to talk about nickel versus iron, and I'm going to talk about it in the context of, well, so what was spelled out at Battery Day by Elon Musk and Drew Baglino was how they're going to make nickel-based battery chemistries in a more cost-effective manner, and how they're going to be able to get more range out of it and other benefits of nickel-based chemistries. They didn't really talk about, yes, 20 terawatt hours in 2030 is what they talked about. Wait 1 second here, sorry. Okay, so let's start with where we are. Tesla has been using nickel, cobalt, aluminum batteries made by Panasonic primarily. They are now using batteries made by LG Chem and by CATL in China, but in the US, I believe all the batteries are made by Panasonic nickel, cobalt, aluminum battery cells. That's the main source of it. Maybe there's others, but I think that's the main source of it. So that is around 250 or 260 watt hours per kilogram energy density. And the cost at the cell level is, I believe, still somewhere over $100 per kilowatt hour. And the goal, or $100 per watt hour. Yeah, $100. I think it's $100 per kilowatt hour. So if you imagine you have a 100 kilowatt hour pack in a Tesla Model S, and it's $100 per kilowatt hour for the cells, then you'd have $10,000 in battery cells, not counting the pack costs in a Model S. If you get down to the 54 kilowatt hour Model 3 standard range pack, I think that's like $5,400 in cells if you're at $100 at the cell level. I've seen people saying that the pack cost on a current Model 3 is around $6,000. So I think they may have gotten nickel, cobalt, aluminum down below $100 an hour, $100 a kilowatt hour. So it wasn't really spelled out. Wait a minute. When we talk about we're reducing costs by 56% or per kilowatt hour, whatever the numbers are, what's the baseline we're starting from? And I think the baseline we're starting from is the current state of nickel, cobalt, aluminum. So 56, yeah, I think they're probably more like $120 per kilowatt hour. And the pack level price I've seen for the Model 3 is probably incorrect, or Tesla's subsidizing it to, it's a replacement cost for the pack and Tesla's subsidizing it. I don't fully understand that. So the big advantage of nickel, which let's talk about this now. Let me put this image up. I've got this image. Let me make it a little smaller so you can still see me if you want to. This is the cost of the 3 different metals that are most commonly talked about: nickel, cobalt, and iron. For some reason, manganese wasn't on this. Aluminum isn't on this. This is just, I think nickel is the main material for the nickel-based chemistries, and iron is the main material for the iron-based chemistries. And what you can see is nickel prices out to something like $16 or $17 per kilowatt hour versus iron pricing out around $6 a kilowatt hour. So iron is much, much less expensive. And my recollection is that while the NCA chemistry, the nickel cobalt aluminum chemistry that's currently being used in Teslas, is still over $100 a kilowatt hour at the cell level, not at the pack level, at the cell level, it's still over $100 a kilowatt hour, maybe $120 a kilowatt hour. The iron-based chemistries are already down around $60 a kilowatt hour. So what we're seeing is they've come up with these improvements that are going to improve the numbers for nickel-based chemistries. You're going to have the silicon anode, you're going to have the dry electrode, the Maxwell process for making the cathodes without going through the wet process that takes up so much more space and adds so much more capital expenditure. A lot of those benefits are going to go into iron-based chemistries as well. And what we're going to see is nickel-based chemistries are going to come down below $100 a kilowatt hour. And I think we're going to see nickel-based chemistries get down to $80 or $60 a kilowatt hour. But we're going to see the iron-based chemistries drop to maybe $40 a kilowatt hour or less. So, and it was very clear throughout the presentation, iron costs less than nickel, and it's a substantial drop. So, I'm going to get this off. So, you can just see this right here. I'm just going to get this off the screen. Iron costs less. Nickel has more range. Nickel has more energy density. So, and let me take a step back here again. So you've got the current nickel, cobalt, aluminum chemistries around 260 watt hours per kilogram. Elon said in a tweet that he thought they would be manufacturing at 400 watt hours per kilogram in volume in about 3 years. So I've backtracked that to my ballpark estimate that the high nickel chemistry, I'm a little confused. Is he saying that the high nickel chemistry is already 400 watt hours per kilogram and it's just going to take him 3 years to make it in volume? Or is the current generation of the high nickel chemistry where I think it is around 340 or 350 watt hours per kilogram, and that will climb to 400 watt hours per kilogram within 3 years manufactured in volume? I think it's the latter. I think it's that the high nickel chemistry is 350 watt hours per kilogram. And that leaves a question. He talked about a nickel manganese chemistry where they would be able to make more. I'll talk about that later. What's the nickel manganese watt hours per kilogram? Kind of left us all hanging on a lot of that. So, but ultimately, when we talk about nickel versus iron, we're talking about, say, the Plaid Model S. I believe they said the Plaid Model S was going to hit 500, correct me if I'm wrong, 520 miles of range. If the Plaid Model S is using high nickel chemistry, which it pretty clearly is, if it's using structural battery pack, which it clearly is, the current long-range Model S has a 402-mile range. A 50%, they said there was going to be about a 50 or 54% increase in range. So a 50% increase in range for the same pack weight, I think it means, would mean that the same pack weight in a Model S that gets 402 miles is now going to get 50% increase, would be 600 miles. So we're looking at a Model S that has a high nickel pack of the same weight could conceivably get over 600 miles in range. And I think it means the Plaid Model S is actually using less weight. And I think we may be talking about a 120 kilowatt hour pack for the Plaid Model S. I don't think it needs more than 120 kilowatt hours for the Plaid Model S. So take a step back. Let's suppose you had I'm going to jump from the Model S and we'll talk about the Model 3 just because that's the main model right now. If the Model 3, let me just get rid of that. So if the Model 3 has a range of, let's say, 300 miles now, and you are able to extend that range to 450 miles with the same weight with a high nickel pack. And then you figure, well, wait a minute, iron isn't as good. Iron is 1.55x nickel. Elon said that nickel was 50 or 60% better than iron. Well, then I think an iron phosphate battery of the same weight, if you can get 450 miles on a nickel pack, then you should be able to get more than 300 miles on an iron phosphate pack of the same weight as the high nickel pack, of the same weight as the nickel cobalt aluminum pack that we have now. That the improvements we're seeing are going to be improved so much that I think we're going to see, and I think this is already happening in China, we're going to see iron phosphate batteries in the Model 3 that will be approaching 300 miles of range. So that's going to be an interesting back and forth. I think this is one of the questions. What's the range of an iron phosphate pack? We know that given the same weight, if an iron phosphate pack weighs, let's say 1,000 pounds, 450 kilograms, something like that, then the nickel pack of the same weight is going to get 60% more range. If you got 300 miles with an iron phosphate pack, then you should be able to get 480 miles with a nickel pack on a Model 3 of the same weight. But the cost difference is what's huge, that model, because they tend to price it in dollars per kilowatt hour, that nickel pack of the same weight is going to have that much more energy. So if your iron phosphate pack works out to 54 watt, or let's say 50 because it's easy, let's say it's 50 kilowatt, I think you need a 75 kilowatt hour pack to get 300 miles of range. Then the nickel pack's going to have about 100 kilowatt hours in it. It's going to cost more per kilowatt hour, so it's going to cost a lot more per pound. So I think that's going to be an interesting thing to talk about. And I want to talk briefly about high nickel versus nickel manganese. So they said that the gain from going 2/3 nickel, 1/3 manganese to going to all nickel is not that much. It matters in something like Plaid Model S, it matters in Roadster, and it matters in semi, excuse me. I've been told to say semi, not semi. That, you know, every pound counts for semi. Every pound counts for a high performance vehicle. Every kilogram, every pound counts. But this is one of the things I'm really struggling with. Semi is a big volume thing. Cybertruck Tri-Motor at $70,000 or so is a big thing. I wonder if Cybertruck Tri-Motor is going to be able to get away with nickel manganese. But on their slide, I didn't prepare the slide. On their slide, they showed Cybertruck as high nickel. All of Cybertruck, which this is going to be the video I'm going to do next week, talking about what I think is really going to happen with Cybertruck batteries. That's the first video I'm going to do this coming week. So they talked about in 2030 achieving 3 terawatt hours of high nickel batteries, and I don't think that makes sense. I don't think there's enough demand for high nickel chemistries. If you look at, say, the United States, if you were going to produce 100,000 100,000 of the semi trucks, excuse me, 100,000 of those trucks would, it's 1 megawatt hour per truck, so it's 100 gigawatt hours. So in 2030, and 100,000 of those trucks would be half the U.S. market. So that's not, that's not going to count for 3 terawatt hours. That's not making a dent in 3. Even if you did 5 times as many semi, nationwide, worldwide, whatever, you still wouldn't get anywhere close to the 3 terawatt hours. Plaid Model S and Roadster are going to be low volume vehicles. Tri-Motor Cybertruck is going to have some volume, but it's fairly expensive. I still don't think the volume is going to be that high. To me, it makes a lot more sense that Tesla's going to produce a much higher volume of nickel manganese batteries. If you missed it, what they said was, because I guess manganese has effectively unlimited supply, but nickel is constrained. So if you're using 100% nickel and instead you switch to 2/3 nickel, you're able to make 50% more battery cells. So the regular Model S, the regular Model X, the Model Y, and probably some of the Model 3s will probably be using nickel manganese, and that's where the volume is. So I didn't understand why they're talking about 3 terawatt hours of high nickel. I don't think there's enough, that's for mass sensitive applications, and other than maybe, launching stuff into space and some very expensive vehicles, it didn't really. The only thing that makes sense is if it ends up being that they're able to secure a tremendous volume of nickel, so that nickel is no longer a constraint, and the cost of making a high nickel battery is trivially more than the cost of making a nickel manganese battery. So I'm not sure where they're heading for 2030. I think that's really going to be an interesting issue. Is, what's the balance between high nickel and nickel manganese? And it sounded like there's a lot more market for nickel manganese than there is for high nickel. So, yes, Elon didn't just tweet that Cybertruck would have the high nickel batteries. It was in the Battery Day presentation. So yeah, well, Giannis, LFP battery cells are way cheaper than high nickel cells, but Tesla at Battery Day set forth a path to dramatically lowering the cost of the high nickel cells. And the question becomes, how close is it going to be in 2025 or 2030? I still think that iron phosphate is going to be that much cheaper. And let's talk about iron phosphate now. I think iron phosphate is the real story. I did a video about this week. I think, there's a link to the video in the description. There's a link. Iron phosphate is the real story. If you look at their projections for 2030, that the world is going to need not Tesla's going to produce, not Tesla's products are going to use, but that the world is going to need 20 terawatt hours of battery cells, and maybe 25 terawatt hours of battery cells, 10 terawatt hours for energy, and 10 terawatt hours for vehicles. And they were pretty clear, I thought, not as clear as I would have liked, but they were pretty clear that the grid storage side, the 10 terawatt hours of energy, would pretty much all be iron phosphate, lithium iron phosphate batteries. And I can't think of a credible argument why you would use anything other than iron phosphate for the energy side of the market. The iron phosphate chemistry seems to have a better cycle life, and it costs less, and you don't care about mass or volume in grid storage mostly. Somebody said, well, if you have a power wall, you don't want it to be too much volume. You don't want it to take up too much space in your garage, but I think you can put a power wall outside. I think there are people who are going to value the smaller form factor, and maybe they would pay extra, but the vast majority of the grid storage I think we're going to see is going to be volume is irrelevant, mass is irrelevant, so use iron phosphate. So that 2030 projection, everything should be iron phosphate for the energy side. So that's 10 gigawatt hours. 10 terawatt hours. On the vehicle side, the high nickel demand, they said they're going to do 3 terawatt hours of high nickel. I don't see it. I don't see the demand reaching 3 terawatt hours for high nickel chemistries. I'm struggling to see where that demand comes from. I think we're going to see a lot more nickel manganese for anything where range matters at much. And then with iron phosphate, we know they're already starting to use iron phosphate in the Made in China Model 3. It seems likely they'll be using iron phosphate in Model Y. And this is another thing that I'm going to bring something up that's not in my chart. I didn't go through my chart, did I? Let's see. We're down. We did high nickel and nickel manganese. We're talking iron phosphate now. Sorry. So I'm not good at this whole I got to work on this thing. So if iron phosphate is here, with the improvements in iron phosphate, I personally see like I would love a Tesla Model S, but $75,000 is crazy. I can't spend $75,000 on a car. What if they used iron phosphate in a Tesla Model S, and they were able, instead of, with all the improvements, with the structural pack, with the various improvements, what if they were able to get a Tesla Model S to get 325 miles of range with an iron phosphate pack? That's somewhat compelling. If you're somebody, and what if you were able to get that price down because it's so much less expensive? Let's say you're talking about an 80 kilowatt hour pack, and the cost per kilowatt hour is right now it's a 100 kilowatt hour pack, and it costs, let's say the pack costs $12,000. Now you're getting that pack cost down to maybe $4,000 because there's fewer kilowatt hours and so on, and you've improved your vehicle manufacturing. What if you're able to deliver a Tesla Model S for $60,000? what does that do to the mid-level sedan market? You know, you're no longer competing just with the Mercedes S-Class. Now you're competing with the Mercedes E-Class. You're not just competing with the BMW 7 Series. You're competing with the BMW 5 Series. So I think there's tremendous potential for iron phosphate to have a large share of the vehicle market. And we got to keep in mind, this is one of the things that I think people really haven't come to grips with yet. Are we heading to a robo-taxi world? Everything, I feel like the presentation for Battery Day ignored robo-taxi, like robo-taxi is not going to happen. And I am a big believer in the robo-taxi story, that I think it's coming soon. So if robo-taxis are coming, just try to picture a day in the life of an urban robo-taxi. If an urban robo-taxi does 180 miles driving from 6 a.m. to ballpark of 1 p.m., and then somewhere between noon and 2, it takes a half-hour break to charge up. And then it does another 180 miles, and then it goes and, you know, waits in line to charge at the end of the day. That means it's able to cover 360 miles in a day. And let's say it makes money for 250 miles, that it makes $250 a day. You're talking about almost $100,000 in revenue a year for that robo-taxi. It's in that ballpark, $100,000 a year in revenue for that robo-taxi. But if you can do it where it does 180 miles, charge 180 miles, you only need a 200-mile range pack. And don't forget, lithium iron phosphate cycles well, so you're not going to have much degradation from your 200-mile range. So if you can achieve close to 300 miles of range in a Model 3, and then you're going to have this custom robo-taxi coming that's going to be hyper efficient, I think that the custom robo-taxi, and they said the custom robo-taxi, the robo-taxi would be iron phosphate. There's this question that when you go out to 2030, which we're going to talk about in item number 7, but what share of the market is robo-taxis versus other vehicles? Are people still buying Tesla Model S's in 2030? Are people still? So we'll cover that. All right, so let's move on. Let me talk about, just see if there's any good questions in here. Sorry. Well, yeah, Thaddeus says 180 miles is super high in that time frame for an Uber Lyft driver. I think the network's going to be more efficient. No, I'm just saying that's the capability. If it did, you know, 6 a.m. to, let's say 2 p.m. or let's say 6 a.m. to noon, that's 6 hours, 18 miles an hour. Yeah, you're still not getting there. I don't know. I think that robotaxi is going to easily get by with a 200-mile range. I don't know why. But anyway, that's the interesting question. So let's talk about 2022. They set a target in 2022 of 100 gigawatt hours of high nickel battery production for Tesla. Okay. And their partners are going to be supplying other batteries. I think it's pretty clear by 2022 between CATL in China, LG Chem, I think also in China, Panasonic in the US, and some unknown battery supplier in Europe, that the other chemistries, the non-high nickel chemistries that Tesla is not producing, the other chemistries should be delivering more than 100 gigawatt hours in 2022. So now you got to wrap your head around this. Let's suppose we're aiming for a 50 kilowatt hour pack in our vehicle. Okay, we're doing a Model 3 and it's not super long range. We've got the structural battery pack that makes it more efficient. And let's say that 50 kilowatt hour pack gets us 250 miles of range. And let's just assume, I'm just using this as a baseline just to sort of figure out how many vehicles is that. So, and then, sorry. So I'm going to go with some ballpark numbers. This is what I'm going to be doing in my video this week, and I'm going to firm these numbers up. But 100 gigawatt hours. So the 100, let's take a step back. So they're going to be producing Tesla Semi. The first consumer of the high nickel pack, the high nickel battery cell chemistry, is going to be Semi. That's the one that needs it more than anything else. So if Semi uses 1 megawatt hour, 1,000 kilowatt hour pack to go the 500 mile range, I think that's the projection. Let's just assume for a moment that they're all the long range model. I don't think that's true. I think we're probably looking at an average of 800 kilowatt hours for Semi. But it's easier math if we say they're all 1 megawatt hour. So if they made 1,000 of them, well, that would be 1 gigawatt hour. If they make 10,000 of them, it would be 10 gigawatt hours. If they make 100,000 semi in 2022, which I don't think they'll have the manufacturing scale to do it, that would use all the high nickel batteries. So that seems unlikely. I think it's more likely that by 2022, they've scaled up production of semis somewhat, and they're able to produce, let's say, 20,000 semis. If they produce 20,000 of them, and we'll just say 20,000, maybe it's 25,000, and we're at an 800 kilowatt hour pack average, that's 20 gigawatt hours. We still got 80 gigawatt hours left to use. So Cybertruck tri-motor, I think that's going to have a 150 kilowatt hour pack. I go into it now. I'm going to do that in a video next week. So let's say that has a 150 kilowatt hour pack. If you make 100,000 Cybertruck tri-motors, is that probably in the ballpark correct? 100,000 Cybertruck 100,000 Cybertruck tri-motors with a 150 kilowatt hour pack. I think was a 100 kilowatt hour pack. I think that would be 10 gigawatt hours. So that's 15 gigawatt hours. Somebody can correct my math if I got that wrong. So you've got 15 gigawatt hours going to Cybertruck tri-motor. You've got 10 gigawatt hours going to semi. Where are all these battery cells going? I am really struggling with this. I don't know where all these battery cells are going in 2022. If they're going to produce 100 gigawatt hours in 2022, Plaid Model S is going to be a low volume vehicle. Roadster is going to be a low volume vehicle. They're not going to use that much. Where is this 100 gigawatt? This is like a really big challenge. This is the video I'm going to do next week. And right now I'm just thinking it through, and I'm checking the comments to see if anybody has any brilliant ideas here. Check, is my math wrong? If you do, now maybe let's throw in dual motor Cybertruck, and let's say we're not even making single motor Cybertruck. And let's say they make 300,000 Cybertrucks that are all using 100. Well, dual motor is not going to have the 150 kilowatt hour pack. That's going to have a 75 kilowatt hour pack maybe. So let's say they average 100 kilowatt hours across 300,000 vehicles. I think that gets you to 30 gigawatt hours, and you still got like 60 gigawatt hours left. So yeah, no, I know Cybertruck tri-motor was moved up to 2021 and single motor was moved back to 2022. But I'm just saying, they said their target is to achieve 100 gigawatt hours of high nickel production by 2022. Where are those batteries going? Now, I think a good guess about the 100 gigawatt hours is that 10 gigawatt hours will be produced in Fremont, maybe 20. Ballpark of 30 gigawatt hours will be produced each in Berlin, Austin, and Shanghai. Well, I think maybe it's going to be more like 40 gigawatt hours produced in Austin needs it for, Austin's producing Cybertruck, Austin is producing semi. What are the Europeans going to do with the high nickel chemistry? Are they going to make semi? Okay, so Mark, I agree they go into performance cars, but there isn't enough volume of the performance cars. Core Glass, the Model 2 or the custom robo-taxi model they talked about is going to be iron phosphate. So this is just a challenge. This is a big challenge for me, and I'm asking you guys to think about it. What do you do with 100 gigawatt hours of high nickel chemistry? There's no way they're scaling up semi-production to that volume in 2022. I think they could scale up Cybertruck production in 2022, but I'm not sure they could scale it up that much. Are they going to put the high nickel chemistry? Because the way they presented it, Model Y is going to have the nickel manganese chemistry. So if they're producing that much in that volume, I think there's somewhere they're sandbagging us. And my guess is we're going to see high nickel chemistry in Model Y. Model Y is going to be the big volume vehicle. Model Y is going to have the structural battery pack in Europe. They're going to make the Model Y in Europe with the high nickel chemistry. And it's going to have an 80 kilowatt hour pack. It's going to get over 300 miles of range. It's going to be really lightweight. It's going to be a phenomenal performer. Yeah, they can't. I don't think they can make 10,000 road. They can't sell 10,000 roadsters. And if they did with a 200 kilowatt hour pack, that still wouldn't add up to that many cells. What does that add up to? That's 2 gigawatt hours. That's not enough. You're trying to. How are we using 100 gigawatt hours? I don't get it. And And okay, so if it's 100 gigawatt hours of high nickel, what's the share of iron phosphate and nickel manganese and nickel cobalt aluminum? We can expect that Panasonic will be producing, unless Panasonic, this is one of the questions, is Panasonic going to shift from nickel cobalt aluminum to nickel manganese at some point? It's not clear what's going on there. I think that Tesla is going to make a deal with, I think Tesla's going to make a deal with Panasonic to shift from the nickel cobalt aluminum to a new chemistry. Maybe Panasonic will be making iron phosphate batteries. Maybe Panasonic will be making nickel manganese batteries. That's a real question. So if it's 100 gigawatt hours of high nickel, I think we're talking significantly more than 100 gigawatt hours of the other chemistries. I think CATL is eager to scale. So I wouldn't be surprised to see 100 gigawatt hours of, I wouldn't be surprised to see 100 gigawatt hours of lithium iron phosphate. Almost all of it going into grid storage, with some of it going into Model 3s in China and Model Ys in China. And then this nickel manganese or nickel cobalt aluminum or something is going to be going in Model 3 and Model Y and Model S and Model X. I could see where Model S and Model X really get the high nickel chemistries, but they were shown in the nickel manganese chemistry in the slide. Yes, Giannis, Elon said that Tesla will produce only high nickel batteries, but they said in 2022 they will produce 100 gigawatt hours of high nickel chemistry. So what are they doing with that much? That is a huge volume of high nickel chemistry. What are they doing with all those batteries? No, so Rob is saying, is too many batteries really a problem? That's not the point. I think it's great if they produce 100 gigawatt hours of the batteries. I'm just wondering, what are they going to do with them? Where are they going to put these battery cells? Because there's no way they're going to be able to produce, because if they produce, look, if they produced 100,000 semi in 2022, 100,000 semi in 2022, that would use all the cells. But I don't think they can scale production of semi that quickly. I mean, you know, you guys can tell me what you think. They're only going to start producing semi in late 2021. They're not going to be able to scale that to 100,000 a year in just 1 year. No, 100,000 semi trucks, I believe, works out to 100 gigawatt hours if the average pack is a megawatt hour. As I understand it, that, yeah, so, you know, where are all, you know, because the volume vehicles are the ones that supposedly aren't using high nickel, unless they're planning to actually use the, you know, this just baffles me. So, all right, I think well, at 500 kilowatt hours a pack, well, let's just assume for a moment we're using a 1 megawatt hour pack. There's no 500 kilowatt hour pack in a semi. The semi is either a 600 kilowatt hour pack or it's a 1 megawatt hour pack. It's a 1 megawatt hour pack for the 500 mile range, and it's a 600 kilowatt hour pack for the 300 mile range. That's the rough numbers. So if they split 50-50, the average semi is 800 kilowatt hours. But it's easier to use a megawatt hour, because then we can say, well, 100,000 of them would be 100 gigawatt hours. But they're not going to be able to produce 100,000 semi in 2022. And so, and this is where I should be clear, Cybertruck, you know, 2021, they're going to start producing Cybertruck. 2022, they're going to scale production. Maybe they'll be able to produce 100,000 Cybertrucks in 2022. You know, I'm hoping to get mine. I got my order in early. No, 1 gigawatt hour is 1,000 semi-trucks, so 100,000 semi-trucks is 100 gigawatt hours. So Ben Pena says, Berlin is going to need batteries. What is Berlin going to need batteries for? Are they going to be producing semi in Berlin? Are they going to be producing, look, they may very well produce a Plaid Model S in Berlin, but right now the first thing they're going to be producing is Model Y, and Model Y is not slated for the high nickel batteries. And, you know, high nickel is not going to go into grid storage. So Chris Anderson, I think the answer to that question is yes. They will produce more than 20 million cars a year. So, okay, so I've stalled on this question enough. Let me move on to the next question. Let's go out to 2030. We've got 20 terawatt hours of battery production. Now, I think the 100 gigawatt hours of production was, the 2030 high nickel production is 3 terawatt hours. The total production is 20 terawatt hours. So the 20 terawatt hour production, 10 terawatt hours is going to energy, and 10 terawatt hours is going to vehicles. And they kind of laid out where the batteries were going to go. And at that point in 2030, I think we're looking at, you know, just in the US alone, we're talking about the market is 200,000 semis, a new market. And that will probably grow some if the economy grows. But that's, you know, that's only 200 gigawatt hours. So if you did 500,000 semis worldwide with 500 miles range, and keep in mind, a lot of semis don't need that range, but just to use ballpark numbers, 500,000 semis worldwide in 2030 would use 500 gigawatt hours, and we got 10 terawatt hours to use of batteries. You know, where are all these batteries going? They cannot use LFP for Model Y, Chris says. It doesn't have the battery density, so they will use 4680 nickel manganese in Berlin. Well, we don't know if there's anybody has any plans to make 4680 nickel manganese in Berlin. But we're still coming to this. Anyway, so let's just figure, look, 10 terawatt hours is going into grid storage, and whether it's going into Megapack, Power Walls, maybe there's going to be a Gigapack by that point. I'm actually predicting somewhere between 2024 and 2027, maybe sooner, we're going to see Gigapack. Megapack, for those who don't know, is a 3 megawatt hour grid storage module. I could see them saying, you know what, we're going to go modular with Gigapack, and you get 1 gigawatt hour in, you know, this one set module. It's probably too big to make that a module. I don't know, but they'll have this set. It's like 1 gigawatt hour at a time, or that's going to be interesting. So the 10 terawatt hours of vehicle batteries, this is where the robotaxi question comes in. My vision, and I thought this was Elon's vision, and I think Elon has said this in a sense. By 2030, we're all in robotaxis. Very few of us own our own cars anymore. Tesla produces robotaxis. Tesla doesn't bother selling the vehicles. They just run a robotaxi network. Maybe they sell them in volume to fleet operators, but we don't bother owning our own cars anymore. And there's a variety of robotaxi out there, but 80% of the robotaxis are that $25,000 vehicle or smaller. You know, for those who follow my channel and look back in the past, I think we're going to see a huge volume of one-passenger robotaxis that are going to cost $5,000 to make. And that's going to be, you know, like our lives are going to change so radically by 2030, we can't even get a grip on it. So, and you know, the idea being, if you produce single-passenger robotaxis, you can achieve a much greater volume of vehicles, and something like 80% of rides are single passengers. And in the industrialized countries, in the United States and Europe, and you know, there's not a lot of carpooling going on in the rich world. So if you shift the rich world over to single car robotaxis running lithium iron phosphate batteries, if you check my video out earlier, the video I did a few days ago, I am projecting that 80% of all the battery production is going to be iron phosphate, because iron phosphate is cheaper. And, you know, you go out to wherever people are relatively poor. Like, I'm not poor. I live in a big house. You know, we have 2 cars. You know, we have a fairly, you know, we're not wealthy by the standards of where we live, but we're wealthy by world standards. You know, the difference to us of an iron phosphate battery pack versus a nickel battery pack, if it's a few $1,000s and we get an extra 100 miles range, sure, we're going to take the nickel battery pack. But for a lot of people around the world, you know, if you can save them a penny a mile, that's a big deal. You know, it's going to be huge. So I think there's a really interesting question, and, you know, check out my video. It's in the link. It's in the description below. There's a link. How I have 4. I started with 3 models and I ended up with a 4th model of what's the distribution of battery cells in 2030, and I came up with over 80% of battery cells will be lithium iron phosphate. Over 80% of that 20 terawatt hours, over 16 terawatt hours of the 20 terawatt hours will be lithium iron phosphate. And I just don't see the need for the high nickel chemistry. I think that's really interesting. No, I agree. 20 terawatt hours is not based on Tesla uses. 20 terawatt hours is the whole market. Let me just look at some comments here. 2030, many people buy their own cars because not everyone have changed EV. So let's talk about what the goal, as they described it, was we're trying to shift from a world of ICE vehicles to a world of EVs. And because the EVs are better, whether you care about CO2 or not, EVs pollute less. They just pollute less, and there's lots of other pollutants we care about besides CO2. So let's not even talk about CO2 and just say EVs are better because they pollute less. EVs are better because they are lower cost for the user. And they last longer. There's so many advantages. There's less maintenance. So we want to shift to a world of ICE vehicles to a world of EVs. And robotaxis, this is like I feel like whenever I see a comment like this, people are going to want to own their own vehicle. Owning your own vehicle and keeping it in your garage is not accelerating the transition to sustainable energy. When a vehicle goes out into robotaxi use, and that vehicle is used, when a vehicle goes out into robotaxi use, it replaces 5 internal combustion engine vehicles or more. Because if that vehicle does let's say the vehicle does 12 hours a day and the average ICE vehicle does 2 hours a day. Like I take my car, I drive half an hour to work, half an hour back, and I do another hour driving. I'm driving my vehicle for 2 hours. If a robotaxi is driving 12 hours, it's doing 6x what I'm doing. It's replacing 6 ICE vehicles. So we got ballpark 2 billion vehicles to replace in the world. If we're all going to use the EVs the same way we use the ICE vehicles, we got to produce 2 billion EVs. But if each EV replaces 5 ICE vehicles, then we only have to produce 400 million EVs to replace the fleet. And that's the point. And that's why the world needs to go robotaxi. Because if you're buying a vehicle and look, rich people are going to be able to buy a vehicle and stick it in their garage and have it available whenever they want it, sure. But that's not the goal. The goal is to accelerate the transition to, as Skyline says, robotaxis replace 6 cars. I think robotaxis might replace 8. I think the multiplier might be closer to 8, because what does the average vehicle owner around the world use their vehicle? Not, like I actually do less than 2 hours a day in my vehicle. My cars sit in the garage, don't do much at all. I've got friends who drive probably 3-4 hours a day, but I would guess the average vehicle is used less than 2 hours a day, and the average robotaxi is going to be used more than 12 hours a day. It's probably going to be driving 14-16 hours a day. It's going to be 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. or midnight to 6 a.m. They're not operating. That's 18 hours a day. So if you figure they're operating 16 hours a day and the average vehicle is 2 hours a day, it's really 8x. So robotaxis can do 18 hours a day, but the volume of traffic, if you go back to autonomy day, the curve rises. There's not that much demand before, let's say, 7 a.m., and there's not that much demand after, let's say, 9 p.m. So the average robotaxi is not going to be doing 18 hours a day just because there isn't enough volume to use it. Although, one of my views on robotaxis, until we've replaced the fleet, it's going to take a long time to produce enough volume of robotaxis to meet all the demand, so that even in the off-peak hours, there still won't be enough robotaxis for the demand. So until you satisfy the off-peak demand, you're going to need easily 100 million robotaxis just to satisfy the off-peak demand. Let's say that in the 6 a.m. to midnight window, even at the low time, 100 million robotaxis worldwide won't satisfy all the demand. So in the early days, robotaxis are going to be operating 18 hours a day, and they're going to be placing 8 vehicles at a pop. So just looking out to 2030, and the robotaxis are going to be tremendously efficient. That's the other thing, is you can accelerate the transition more if you come up with a vehicle that's even more efficient than the cloaked vehicle they showed. So the vehicle they showed, that's probably 2023 for $25,000. First of all, I think they're sandbagging. I'm just going to say that they're sandbagging. That's going to be $20,000. There's no way that vehicle costs $25,000. By 2023, if they wanted to make a Model 3 for $25,000, they could. I think the cost of making a Model 3 now for Tesla is already close to $25,000. They could pull the cover off that thing, and it's just a Model 3 without a steering wheel in 2023. That vehicle is going to be $19,000 or $19,990. But by 2025 or 26, what's the robo-taxi going to look like? And I genuinely believe we're going to see a shift to single passenger or two passenger robo-taxis that are significantly smaller. We're talking about urban robo-taxis for the purpose of just getting people around, and maybe a long range variant. I should do a live stream just talking about robo-taxis all day. It was cloaked because it was more than one vehicle. I agree with that, Mystic Point Water Sports. That cloaked vehicle is actually, it's the underpinnings. It's the platform for many vehicles. There's going to be a Japanese variant. There's going to be 2 or 3 US variants. There's going to be 2 or 3 European variants. There's going to be a sedan and SUV variation for the US and China, and India is going to have its own variant, maybe. I think there's a lot of different possibilities there. So Mystic Point Water Sports, excellent. And what about the minibus? Everybody knows, if you go back in my videos and see my video about Cyberzan, what about the minibus? When is the minibus coming? Elon talked about it in Master Plan Part 2. The Tesla minibus is going to radically improve the lives of people poor people, both in Europe, the US, and China, but particularly in poorer countries like India, especially in poor countries like Africa and Latin America, the Caribbean. If you can get those people if you can help those people save money and have them drive in a safer vehicle that's autonomously driven and it's safer. If you ever look at the Dominican Republic's traffic fatality rates, it's outrageous. I think it's mostly pedestrians getting killed, but so Skyline says Musk said he doesn't want to do buses. In the Master Plan Part 2, Elon specifically talked about a bus. I don't know whether he's given up on that idea or if it's too far down the road, but I do believe it's coming. So, now the other question that I haven't really come to grips with this, and maybe this is a video a couple weeks from now, is where do the 10 terawatt hours go in 2030? How much of the grid does that support? And is solar panel production, and we've seen solar panel prices dropping in dollars per watt or price per watt. If solar production drops, if wind energy cost drops and we see more wind produced, that's the primary value of the battery, of grid storage, is helping make solar and wind more effective in replacing fossil fuel energy production. So I think we're going to see, this is one of the things, how much does solar panel production increase and where is that coming from? Is Tesla's Gigafactory in Buffalo going to radically increase its production of solar roof tiles? Are they planning to scale? Is Tesla planning to scale solar panel production? Right now they're talking about $1.49 a watt, I think, for solar panels in the US. Does Tesla have plans to build gigafactories for solar in Europe, in China? And keep in mind, solar panels are already produced very inexpensively in China, so I don't know that it makes sense, but we need to scale it up. So I think that's an interesting question there. We need the inverter price drop too. Giannis, I think that might come with scale. If Tesla makes enough storage, what's going to happen to the grid energy providers? Well, keep in mind, if we're able to lower the cost of energy, then people will use more of it, which is a good thing. Okay, so this is a question I'm coming to grips with on 2030. Where's the 20 terawatt hours going, particularly with vehicles? As I described in the video, link below. By the way, merch. Think of a little pitch for my merchandise. If you check out the Teespring store, it's in the link. It should be in the description below. This is the most popular shirt. The Elon Fan Club shirt is also very popular. White on black, for some reason, is more popular than black on white, and there's multiple colors. So, and I want to also thank my Patreon supporters. I have, I think I'm approaching 50 Patreon supporters. I've had some really big contributions. If you're thinking about signing up for Patreon, hey, I'd appreciate, I would say the most common level that people contribute is $5 a month. There's definitely some people contributing $10 a month. Some people are contributing a lot more, and there's people as low as $1 a month. Any support is appreciated. So let me move on to the last topic on my list here, which is CyberCabin. So the other video I made this week, description below, you can see the link, is the CyberCabin. And I didn't save an image of it, but the short story for those who missed it is I bought an acre of land about 2 hours from here. It is in the middle of nowhere, and then you go down a couple dirt roads to find it. It's a really, really remote location, not far from a lake in this. People don't know this. Florida has a ridge running up the center that starts about, I don't know, 100 miles from the southern tip of Miami. It's called the Lake Wales Ridge. And this property is on the Lake Wales Ridge. So this property is 65 feet above sea level. The lake that it's near is 35 feet above sea level. I'm in South Florida at 20 feet above sea level. Miami, Fort Lauderdale, West Palm Beach, all of us are at 20 feet above sea level or less. So even the lakes up there are 35 feet above sea level. And this land is 65 feet above sea level. And it's remote. It's in the middle of nowhere. And I have this plan in 2021, when I get my Cybertruck. The land is so difficult to get to that I really need a four-wheel drive vehicle to get to it. So I'm going to get a dual motor Cybertruck with all-wheel drive so that I can get to my land. I park my sedan, my front-wheel drive sedan, about 500 feet away and walk. That's my current approach to this land. So the plan is sometime in late 2021, I'm going to build a CyberCabin. And I should have an image of it to put up, but I had this brilliant, what I think was a brilliant idea, maybe it's a stupid idea, of, you think about the Starship stacking process, that they take these stainless steel rings that are about 6 feet high, about 2 meters high, and 9 meters in diameter, so about 30 feet in diameter, and they stack them to make Starship. Well, what if you took one of those and put it down, and then you put a geodesic dome on top, and then you put solar panels on the south side of the geodesic dome? That was the idea for CyberCabin. Yes, Mark, I am looking at a grain silo. I don't, it's funny, Mark, Mark mentions the grain silo. Somebody mentioned it to me in a comment, and I don't think grain silos are a common thing in Florida. I think I would have to get that from Georgia. Yes, I'm calling it the CyberCabin. I'm calling it the Apocalypse Cabin. For those who don't know, I'm kind of what you would call a prepper. I think that there are a variety of ways into which everything could collapse, and I tend to be a very optimistic person, so I don't think it's going to happen in any given year. But I think if you figure what's the probability that something really bad happens in the next 20 years, it's not 0. It's not 50%, but it's 10 or 20%. So do you want to be ready for the collapse? And people talk about the zombie apocalypse, just so people know, whenever you hear preppers talking about the zombie apocalypse, we don't mean real zombies. We don't mean the dead come to life and, have no heartbeat and they're able to walk. The zombie apocalypse is a metaphor. The zombies are a metaphor from the people in the cities who run out of food and they start wandering looking for food. And you need to defend your stuff from the people who are desperate. So one way of doing that is buying a lot of guns. I don't think that's a very good approach. I do own guns. I'm not going to say that I'm anti-gun. I own guns myself, and I think it's important to have them. But if you ever get in a gunfight, there's a chance you're going to lose. So the real goal is to avoid the gunfight. The real goal is to be where they aren't, to hit them where they ain't. So being in a remote location is a relatively safe place to be. And this place is so remote that I've been to this property like 10 times. The last time I went, I got lost trying to find it. And I know where it is, and I got lost trying to find it. So it doesn't, if you try to get directions on Google Maps, it doesn't work. Google Maps, that's why I followed Google. I forgot that Google Maps doesn't work, and I went to the spot Google Maps took me, and that's not it. You put in the correct address, you do whatever, it still doesn't take you there. So it's remote. So the simplest way of talking about the Apocalypse Cabin or the CyberCabin is, I live in Florida. We have hurricanes. A really strong hurricane can cause real damage and can make your home area borderline unlivable for a couple weeks at a time. A really bad hurricane. We actually had a bad hurricane, I think it was Irma, a couple years ago. And I have a friend who lives in a spectacular house, and their power went out for days. And they ended up coming and staying with us because we had air conditioning. Our electricity was on. We are in a good spot on the grid. Hopefully that continues, but a hurricane can be bad enough that we lose power too. I'm actually hoping, by the way, that within 2 years, the house that I'm in now, this house will have a Tesla solar roof or Tesla solar panels and power walls, and I will be hurricane safe here. The other challenge for those who don't know what hurricanes are like is if a hurricane is bad enough, the sewers stop working and the sewers start to back up. And then everything starts to smell, and you don't want to be here when everything smells. And if it gets really bad, and in the apocalypse scenario that the people get hungry and they start coming my neighborhood looking for food, my house is on the edge. I'm practically in the Everglades. If the Everglades are right there, they're like a few hundred yards that way is the Florida Everglades. So I'm on the edge of civilization, but I'm still in a populated neighborhood. I'm in a suburb. So the vision is having a place you can go that's not too far of a drive, that when everything falls apart, however bad it falls apart, you have a place you can go where you have electricity, you have food stored up. This is a place where you can hunt. My cyber property, my apocalypse property that I bought, I don't think you would eat bear, but I was there one time and there were 3 bears on the property when we arrived. They left, fortunately. There are wild pigs up there. So wild pigs, you would probably hunt wild pigs and you'd be able to eat wild pigs. Probably going to create a garden. One of my apocalypse cabin ideas is to if you don't know, Kimball Musk, Elon's brother, has a company called Square Roots, and they take containers and they take the container and use it to grow food. So I could see putting a container on the property and growing food on it. Oh, hi, Mike. Which elementary and middle school did you go to? So that was a long rambling explanation for why the CyberCabin. So the dream CyberCabin, which would probably be too difficult to pull off, and I probably will not be able to afford to do, is those stainless steel rings, geodesic dome. The south-facing side has solar panels and probably no windows because you're trying to minimize the heat from the sun. Florida is very hot and humid. You're trying to minimize the impact of that on the interior of the building. The north side faces away from the sun, so you have doors and windows, and they would have a second floor, a fairly small second floor under the geodesic dome that has an upstairs view out the geodesic dome. Animals and zombies can't get into the container, correct. So Harrington event, very interesting. I have thought about hardening for EMP and things like that. Bears are less safe to eat than most animals, not that people should be eating animals. Hey, if you're starving, you eat animals. So I'm leaning away from the stainless steel ring concept, and I looked at a lot of other options. One of the challenges with the property is it's so remote, I don't think you can get a tractor trailer to the property. So the items that you would want to deliver to the property in order to build something would be difficult to deliver. Although I think we can do it where from about 500 feet away, the tractor trailer unloads, a container. This wouldn't work for a container, but it would work for other things. If you have certain supplies, you can drop them about 500 feet away, and then you can have equipment you rent from Home Depot that can pick it up and bring it the rest of the way. The CyberCabin plan the concept is that it would include whatever form it takes. It would have Tesla solar panels, it would have Tesla Powerwall, it would have Tesla HVAC. Hopefully that HVAC will happen. Elon said next year. So Tesla HVAC would be great. That's the Model 3 heat pump using that. The Cybertruck is to help me get there and to bring stuff there. One of the ideas was to use either somebody mentioned Boring Company bricks. Maybe Boring bricks would be a good way of building it. I looked at concrete block construction. It would be a lot. The size I need a minimum of 750 square feet to satisfy the permitting process. So that's a lot of concrete blocks. And one of the ideas was to have a single slope roof. So you have the 4 walls here. Typically you have a peaked roof. And for hurricanes, you really want to have sort of like a pyramid style roof that minimizes the effect of the wind. But another approach would be to have a single slope roof where the sun is here. The sun is here. The single slope roof faces south, so you maximize solar. So after all the searching, looking at concrete block, there's another concept called Quonset Huts, and I still might do a Quonset Hut. Quonset Hut is sort of like a semicircular shape, and it's very easy to assemble. I pretty much settled I'm going to do a steel building. A steel building is a little bit more expensive than a Quonset hut, but a lot more practical once you build it. And Quonset hut is difficult for the solar panels because it tends to be curved. You can't, if you do there's a variant that's not as curved and you could put solar panels on it, but a steel building would have enough. I could do 2 rows of solar panels. I think that may work. So, Starlink. The other feature is going to be Starlink. We're going to have a Starlink antenna. We're going to have Tesla HVAC. We're going to have Tesla solar panels. Now, here's another hurdle. This really surprised me. I'm thinking about doing a petition for this. I've heard that Tesla will not do off-grid solar. That they, for some reason, they will only do solar if it's on the grid. I'm not sure if that's true. I haven't investigated it to verify it, but I've seen a couple people saying that Tesla won't do off-grid solar. So I may end up having to do the solar without Tesla, which I would be very disappointed about. Poster of Elon Musk, yes. So the other thing is, since I have to do 750 square feet, once you're building one of these steel buildings, the extra cost to build it bigger, so going to 1,000 square feet, is a couple $1,000s. The extra cost of building it taller, I was thinking I would do 8-foot high walls before the roof slope starts, but the cost of going taller is pretty trivial. And if you go tall enough, you can conceivably do a second floor, or at least an attic. So I'm probably going to do a little bit taller. Tesla tent, that's not a crazy idea. I should look at Tesla tent. I like that. One of the challenges, it's in Florida, you need to be able to air condition. So whether Tesla tent could be viable for air conditioning, that's an interesting, I got to look up the Tesla tent now, Mark. I like that idea. So anyway, that's the big idea, CyberCabin. So I'm going to take this off. Let's see. I'll leave that on. These people are watching. So let me look. I'm going to start looking at questions now to see what people have to say. Grid solar with storage is very profitable. On-grid solar with storage, it can be profitable. I don't think it's very profitable. I think you make some money, but not a lot. How can they be illegal in apocalypse? That's the thing, Thaddeus. I think we got to petition Elon Musk to make sure that they do off-grid solar. Maybe Elon is afraid if he did off-grid solar, electric companies would get mad at him and never give him permission for superchargers. No, I think the problem, my theory on why they're not doing off-grid solar is because they want solar to be able to feed back into the grid. That's one of the advantages of solar. And another thing is they want to make sure it's connected to the internet so that they can monitor it, and because they're generating data from Tesla solar. Those are two theories. Maybe it's just that they need to get to scale on-grid solar before they do off-grid solar. Maybe that's another theory. I would think off-grid solar would be easier because you don't have to worry about connecting to the grid. So I'm surprised they don't do it. Let's see what else we got. Do we have enough national energy production to be able to support so many EVs? Yes, that's a simple question. The answer is simply yes. The off-grid issue may be due to local laws that the utilities lobbied for. I don't know the answer to that. We'll find out about that. Tesla goal is creating VPP. If Tesla wants to use Tesla Solar and Tesla Powerwall to create virtual power plants, then yes, they want to be on grid. But that doesn't mean you need to be off. You need to prevent off-grid. Off-grid solar is illegal in Florida. No, it's not. No, it's not. That's not true. Sorry, Snork Y2K. Maybe it's illegal. It's not enforced. I've seen off-grid solar in Florida. It's not illegal. If it's illegal, it's not enforced. Partially buried. Florida is not a good place to bury things. The water table in most parts of Florida is very high. So I believe the water table on this lot is probably maybe as little as 3 feet down from the ground. It's near a wetland. It's not in a wetland. Extra high nickel will be used to offer upgrade battery pack for AI models. I do think that's a good theory. Let's go back to the point about what they're doing with the high nickel batteries. What if Tesla said you can get your Model Y, but if you pay $10,000 extra, you get the high nickel pack with an extra 150 miles of range? I think a lot of people would pay $10,000 extra for an extra 150 miles of range. So I think it's very possible, and this is the other, going back to, let's stay with cyber, let's see what else is CyberCabin related. How do you feel about the risk of someone hacking Robotaxi? I'm not worried about it. Steve West, there's a type of building that is fireproof, hurricane-proof, and earthquake-proof. It looks made of something like chicken wire mesh insulation and sprayed on concrete. I have seen that. I think you have to inflate something, and then you spray the concrete on it. I haven't seen whether that's really viable. I don't think FLP controls that. Let's see, ferro cement is the best for you. I think ferro cement, by that you mean, well, so the problem with cement is you need to get a cement truck in, and the property is so remote you can't get a full cement truck in. So trying to do cement, the volume of cement you need to do something large is impossible, is so impractical to do without a cement truck. The extra spillover of Tesla semi-high nickel will go into the plaid tri-motor models. There's not enough plaid tri-motor models to support it. Off-grid solar is legal when your property has never had local grid on it. Right, yeah, there's no local grid. Thank you, Troy. That's on aircrete. So I don't know how. I've looked into aircrete, and I think aircrete is possible. Will your CyberCabin have extra panels for this? Yes, the CyberCabin is the reason to have all the extra panels is to power Cybertruck. 3D print construction is something I've looked at. I don't think that's at scale yet. My brother made a dome of sprayed concrete. It was a nightmare, taking 8 years to build with permits. I think this county is pretty friendly on permitting. I don't think that's going to be a problem. Cybertruck design for cabin. Domes are expensive, not great for solar. I did see, I think if you look at the comments on my video, there's a comment from a guy who's based in Orlando, who's an architect, who has sort of like a Cybertruck type model. You look in the comments on my CyberCabin video, and I forget his name, but he's an architect in Orlando, and I am in touch with him as that's a possibility. When will the 25K car be available in North America? 2023. Warren, you should do video for the upcoming Tesla products, bus, HVAC unit, ATV, eVTOL, etc. I have already done a video about Tesla minibus. Check my videos. Cybervan, Tesla minibus, it's in there. And I think it's really cool, by the way. And I have a shirt. I have a Cybervan shirt, too. One of the merch items is a Cybervan shirt. Go to the Teespring store. It's linked in the description below. There's going to be a Moon and Mars landing this decade. Yes, I think there's going to be Moon and Mars landings. I think that, going off topic here, I think that we're going to see a Starship cargo mission to Mars in 2022. We're going to see multiple Starship cargo missions in 2024, and we're going to see a human mission in 2027, I think it goes to. Simone Gertz make you, I don't know what a truckla is. The only way, one of the theories, somebody said just have your Cybertruck and use it as a camper on the property, and I don't hate that idea, but I probably want to have more space than that. And to be clear, my budget, I believe I'm going to be able to get the basic structure up for about $50,000. This is for CyberCabin. I believe I could do the basic structure, you know, the shell of the building, the foundation, the septic, you know, whatever is necessary to get past the permitting stage, and not have any interior work done. And then you have the problem, you have this big space, and I probably don't want to air condition the whole space, so I'm probably going to very carelessly put together a space that will be air conditioned where you sleep and where you spend your time when you're just hanging out, and then the rest of it's storage, and then eventually over time I build it out. Just getting it built is the start. Can you get a clip of the Muppet Martians? I haven't seen that. The only way my brother got a dome approved in a tough county is when an architect. Yeah, you know, you definitely need an architect to certify what you're. I think it's an architect or an engineer needs to certify the design, but that I can do. They will put high nickel into the plaid tri-motor. Let's see what we got. Took a new Tesla and cut the back and turned it into a truck. It's like what she does on her channel. Yeah, I'm not doing that. A mini split is pretty cost efficient. It could run on solar. What's a mini split, Jesse? No, so I'm expecting the CyberCabin to be 100 and maybe 1,200 square feet, and I'm probably going to build it taller than. I'm torn on the height. The easy thing to do is make the walls 8 feet high, and then when I put the solar up, it'll be easy to get to the solar panels on the roof. Now, the other theory is you don't want it to be easy to get the solar panels on the roof. Other people have said do ground-based solar. I'm worried the solar panels are going to get stolen. Because I don't plan on being at this property a lot. I like where I live. I'm planning on going to this property probably once a month or less. So now I should say, I don't think I mentioned this before. I mentioned in the video below, this is about a mile from a gorgeous lake. So I think Cybertruck would be great for carrying a kayak around, or a couple kayaks, or a canoe. So I kind of picture going up there and probably having kayaks there, excuse me, and bringing the kayaks to the lake and going kayaking on the lake. And that's a good weekend. You got a place to sleep, you go kayaking. The there's not a lot of good Chinese restaurants or Indian food up there, but there's great barbecue. So you go for a weekend, you go have some barbecue for lunch, and you have a refrigerator, so you eat the leftovers, whatever. You go out kayaking, probably go fishing. There's supposed to be great bass fishing on this lake. Check the video in the description below. Check that video, the CyberCabin video. No, that's the CyberCabin video. And you can see I got a clip of the lake. Way more pre-orders than 10K for Plaid Model S and Roadster. Yeah, but it's a question of how fast they can scale production of Plaid Model S and Roadster. Trevor is the guy you want for cement. I don't know what that means. Who's Trevor? Where is he? If it's a prepper type thing, why not hire a barn builder for the structure? So, I think a steel building is cheap enough. I don't think a barn building would be cheaper. Waiting for the Warren Redlich shirt. Maybe I should do a Warren Redlich. I don't think that many people would buy I don't know if I would buy a Warren Redlich shirt. A mini split is a type of AC heat pump used in small homes in Japan and all across the US. They're small and efficient. I will take a look at that. Mini split. Hopefully, please put it in a comment. I'll take a look at that. Are you still going to do... Yes. So Vow of Practicality asked the question, are you still going to do year-by-year projection videos? So the plan, Vow of Practicality, is... The next video I'm going to make is about Cybertruck. I think the question about what batteries Cybertruck will use is really interesting. And I made a video, if you go back in my channel, if you just search my channel for Cybertruck battery, I made a video about the Cybertruck batteries, and I want to do an updated video about that first because that's going to help me do the projections going forward. So after I do the Cybertruck battery video, which is going to be, I think, a fairly short video, maybe 10 minutes. A lot of my videos are 30 or 40 minutes. This will be, maybe an 8 or 10 minute video. I'm going to start doing, these are going to be a series of shorter videos. So I'm going to do a video of just 2020. I'm going to start with 2022 because that's where we have the 100 gigawatt hours. We have the 100 gigawatt hours right here. So the first video I do after the Cybertruck video is going to be, what is the Tesla production going to look like when they have 100 gigawatt hours of high nickel production, and then maybe 100 or 200 gigawatt hours of other production. What is that 2022 year going to look like? What products are produced? What's the revenue that they generate? What's Tesla's total revenue in 2022 with that number? And keep in mind, whenever I say 100 gigawatt hours, you see 100 gigawatt hours here, that may be Elon's prediction of run rate at the end of 2022 rather than total production for 2022. But it would mean production for 2023 is more than 100 gigawatt hours. So that may mean the numbers are off by 6 months. So for all that series, but I'm going to do 2022 and I'm going to project ahead 2020. And just figure if it's 100 gigawatt hours in 2022, it's 150 gigawatt hours in 2023. And I worked it out, and that gets you close to the 3 terawatt hours in 2030 if you have a 50% increase a year. So it will be 2022 will be the video after Cybertruck, then 2023, and then 2024, and we'll see how far that goes. One video at a time, trying to predict where it's going. Daiken mini split. Trevor has a brother. Is Trevor a joke? I don't know what Trevor is. Cement expert running a hydrogen development business. Okay. Oh, Trevor Milton. Yeah, I'm not having Trevor do anything. Tesla knows some things about LFP. What do we do? Cell optimizing allows them to get at 3. No, I don't think they're going to get to 300 watt hours per kilogram with LFP. I think they're going to get to 200 watt hours per kilogram with LFP. And then with the vehicle improvements, with the structural battery pack, with other improvements in how vehicles are made, and the structural battery pack reduces the... LFP has I think it's 160 watt hours per kilogram now. I think they're going to improve that to 200 watt hours per kilogram. And then when you solve the pack problem and you reduce when the pack weight goes down because you're going structural battery pack, that makes the 200 watt hours per kilogram close to the 250 watt hours per kilogram of the current nickel, cobalt, aluminum batteries that are being used now that are getting over 300 miles of range in a 75 kilowatt hour pack. So I think they may be able to get a 60 kilowatt hour pack in a Tesla Model 3, in a Tesla Model Y, and then with other improvements, more efficient tires, other efficiencies, more efficient motors. I think they're going to get close to that 300 mile range in both Model 3 and Model Y with, let's say, a 60 or 65 kilowatt hour pack from LFP, lithium iron phosphate. Let's see. Will deliveries reach 1.5 million by December 2021? Great question, Miguel. I think I addressed that. It's a question of how fast Berlin, Shanghai is scaling. Fremont's going to be 500,000 or more vehicles in 2020. So Fremont's probably going to be 600,000 or more vehicles in 2021. Shanghai is probably going to be 500,000 vehicles in 2021. So you're already talking over 1 million vehicles between those two. Berlin and Austin, I don't think 1.5 million vehicles is out of reach for the year 2021. I think we may hit that. I think it's 1.2 million, 1.3 million. It could reach 1.5 million. It kind of depends, if we have another COVID lockdown or, so hard to predict. I think that the COVID lockdown thing, once November 3rd hits, the election day is over, sometime then a week or two after that, the election is settled. I think the world goes back to relatively normal in 2021. And I think we're going to see massive growth for Tesla. John Hansen, you said Elon has said he thinks 250 watt hours per kilogram is possible 3 to 5 years with LFP. Where did you see that? I've never seen Elon say that. I don't think he said that. I don't think it's true. I'd love to see it. Let's see. Tablet cells 4680. Yes. Let's see. 250. Tesla's only. I don't know. I think that's a really good question. Are the partners, are the suppliers going to gear up production of lithium iron phosphate? Who's going to make nickel manganese? My impression on this, by the way, is Tesla has a system for manufacturing this stuff. And Tesla's going to make a deal with, let's say, CATL or LG Chem or Panasonic and say, we will work with you to implement the technology we've developed. The deal is you have to commit to supplying us with a specific volume of these cells over the next 10 years, which is great for the supplier because they have this huge flood of revenue and certain revenue and certain profits coming over the next 10 years. That's great for the supplier. We've got this growth we can show our prospective shareholders, our owners. That increases the value of the battery company. And Tesla doesn't need to make money on the batteries. Tesla is going to make so much more money on the vehicles, on the grid storage, on the Autobiddo software for Tesla Energy, on the solar panels. Here's another wacky idea that I think might happen. I put this on Twitter. What if Tesla started making wind energy products? Because on their chart, they showed solar and wind both decreasing in cost. What if Tesla said, hey, we've got a solution to make wind less expensive we've got a solution for wind. What if they could put windmills, I don't know if you've ever seen vertical windmills. They're not the big, they don't go like this, they go like this, whatever. What if they came up with a wind power solution you could mount on your roof that goes along with solar, right? And now when the sun isn't shining but the wind is blowing, you have more energy, you have energy that you didn't have before. That would be cool. Tesla bricks. I don't think that the soil condition, I think Tesla will be boring tunnels in Florida, but I don't think it will happen soon enough for my CyberCabin. And I don't think the material that they will, I don't think the soil conditions, the material that they'll be boring through in Florida will generate the right material for boring bricks. I think that works better when you're drilling through rock. And I don't think the limestone that underpins Florida would be the same. Their motors or generators. Well, that was the idea. I think somebody said this. If Tesla put a windmill up and they used a Tesla motor in reverse, so they're basically doing regenerative braking with the windmill to generate energy, would that work? That's an interesting idea. Let's see. First Starship to the moon will have a TBM. I don't know if the first Starship will have a TBM. I do think they will use a TBM. I think they will send proof rock. Proof rock is designed to dive in. I think they will dig a tunnel and they will just to make bricks, they will use it to make habitat underground, which will be safer. Let's see. Integrate storage into wind. With silicon anode and bipolar cell structure. I don't know what bipolar cell structure is. I think that's a futuristic thing that's not happening yet. If they can build a gigafactory in Berlin, I can't see where building one. No, I think I did a video. I don't think it's in the description below. I think it's one of my recent videos. I did a video about where the next gigafactory will be, and I think Ontario is coming. I think there will be some kind of gigafactory. Keep in mind, there's already a gigafactory in Buffalo, which is right across the St. Lawrence River from Ontario. But they already have operations in Ontario, so I could totally see a gigafactory in Ontario building battery cells, lithium iron phosphate cells, nickel cells, I don't know. Dedicated Model 2 factory in Mexico? I don't think so. I think I talked about Mexico. I don't think the Less hassle. I think Austin has very little hassle. I think Mexico is worse business environment than Texas. Cross the river into Canada would be awesome. Yeah, no politics. I agreed. Okay, so we're an hour and 24 minutes in. Normally I go longer than this, but I would get an RV for my cabin. I do think, so one of the things about CyberCabin, I've seen a couple people say this was, well, just use your Cybertruck and make it a camper and you can camp on that property. Yes, but you might want more space than that. Tesla minivan, you know, the Tesla Cybervan with as set as an RV would be better for that. One of the challenges is if you face high winds, I'm not sure that Cybervan or Cybertruck is safe under high winds. And yes, you could tie it down, but that's not really an ideal solution. So building a cabin is a much better solution, and then you'll have, it's easier to, I think one of the interesting questions I haven't come to grips with yet is, does it make sense to do solar on the roof or solar on the ground? If I can do Tesla solar panels on the roof, great. If Tesla won't do off-grid solar, then does it make more sense to do solar on the ground when solar is more likely to be stolen on the ground? I don't know. I don't think there's a lot of theft up there, so. Is your lake saltwater? No, the lake is not saltwater. The lake is rainwater. It might be spring water. There might be springs feeding it too. I'm not sure. Definitely not saltwater. I have worked in car factories in Mexico. I don't want anything involving safety built in Mexico. Interesting. I don't think it's brackish. I think it's fresh water. There's bass growing. There's bass in it. I haven't seen any indication there would be brackish. I mean, you probably wouldn't want to drink the water straight up. You'd want to filter it. Let's see. You can always get Tesla to install on-grid solar and then do... Well, you have to be on the grid to do on-grid solar. There's no grid connection to the property. I have talked to the neighbors. I've tried, let me rephrase that. I mailed letters to all the neighboring property owners saying, hey, I bought this lot. If you want to sell me your lot, I'm interested in buying it. I paid, just so you know, I paid $6,000 for this acre, so it's a really inexpensive piece of land. Only one of the neighbors even responded to me, and he wanted an excessive amount of money for his land, which I don't need another lot. And the other thought was, can we cooperate to bring in electricity as a group? You know, if we share the cost of bringing electricity, if we share the cost of improving the road, then everything's easier. But then if you improve the road, then it's easier for the zombies to get to your property. So, your thoughts for a future subject is giga presses and how they will tell us of Tesla's total production capability. Great question. So there's two kinds of production Tesla's going to be doing. They're going to be doing Cybertruck production. They're going to be doing press construction. It sounds like, you know, I think we're going to see what happens with Cybertruck. If Cybertruck is successful and it radically reduces the cost, keep in mind that the structural battery pack and the gigacasting is also reducing the cost of producing vehicles. They still have paint shop where Cybertruck doesn't have paint shop. So it's going to be an interesting question 2 years from now. We're going to be seeing full-scale Model Y production, and we're going to be seeing full-scale Cybertruck production. Will it make sense to make more cyber vehicles, or is the new manufacturing method cost competitive with Cybertruck, so it's not that much of an advantage to do Cybertruck? I don't think we need to be gated. Nobody can find the place. Make a moat or go. We don't need a moat. No. Somebody suggested we would have perimeter sensors, or I could see if you have solar, you could run cameras and use AI to check. The problem with having perimeter sensors and motion sensors is there's a lot of wild animals. So you don't want to freak out every time a bear walks on the property or a pig walks through the property. But maybe somebody could develop AI that can distinguish bad two-legged animals versus benign four-legged animals. And Powerwall go off-grid, I thought they said no. They should offer an off-grid solution. I think, you know, I may do a petition.org thing for petition Elon Musk to make Tesla. I got to find out for sure that it's not off-grid capable first. Berlin will have 8 presses. For a car to have 3 casts for each is $1.9 million a year for 24/7 production by my numbers. That is very interesting, David Rucker. I'm going to think about that for the video I produce, the next videos I produce. Windmills for cars or gyrocopters. Cool. Full off-grid capabilities are coming in the future. Please reserve a Powerwall. We will contact you once off-grid is available in your area. Awesome. Thank you, Giannis. I will look that up. Thank you, Giannis. So Giannis says that off-grid is coming. Cool. You would think off-grid would be easy and they would do it first, but for whatever reason they don't. Okay, so let's see, any other questions? Motion sensor AR-15, that would probably be illegal. There's a court case on that. You can't set an automated firearm to defend yourself. We covered that when I was in law school. Sorry. Yeah, let's see. Okay, so we're about an hour and a half in. I guess I will. Berlin to make right hand. So the question Matt Burns just asked is, will Berlin make right hand drive also? Right hand drive here in America and in much of the world and most of Europe, the steering wheel. If you have the car here, I would be sitting on the left side of the car as the driver, and my passenger would be on the right. I don't know how this looks on the screen. In England and Japan and some of the Caribbean, the driver sits on the right side of the car and the passenger seat is on the left. So currently Tesla Fremont has been making vehicles both right-hand side and left-hand side. I anticipate that Fremont is only going to be making vehicles for the US and Canada and maybe some other places that are all left-hand drive. And then Tesla China is making primarily left-hand drive. But who's going to supply the vehicles to England and Japan? So in my video, I'm predicting, oh, thank you, David Rucker. Thank you for the contribution. I think it's somewhat likely that Tesla will open a Gigafactory in Japan. Japan is the third largest car market in the world after China and the US. Fourth largest if you consider the European Union one market. So Tesla Giga Japan could make vehicles for Japan and New Zealand, and I think Australia is also right-hand drivers here, the passengers here. Will Berlin make a right-hand side? I think one of the other theories is that England is a fairly large car market itself, and we might see a Gigafactory for the UK. And then I'm not sure what other countries in Europe that it would sell vehicles to. That's a question. Or maybe the Giga UK will make vehicles that are right-hand drive and also make vehicles for left-hand drive for export. Great question. What will Elon do with all that computing power? Let me just talk about that. Yeah, missing pieces. What will Elon do with all the computing power when they get FSD done? Tesla Web Services, very interesting idea. Could the fleet be used as a cloud computing when the vehicles aren't running? Now, keep in mind, if the fleet is running as a robo-taxi, then the FSD chips are occupied. So one big thing, a video I'm going to be making in about a month, is I am predicting that the FSD version 4 chip is coming in 2021. Bobby Boucher, thank you. I'm nervous about buying Tesla now after the run-up. I'm not used to buying and holding for the long term. Help me, please. Okay, so first thing, Bobby, is I am not an investment advisor. I'm not I have opinions, but I'm not qualified to advise you. And I get these questions a lot. So first of all, I don't know your personal circumstances. I don't know your risk tolerance. So I'm not really worried if Tesla stock falls by 50% because I bought it for $65 a share, and it's now $420 or $440 a share. So if it falls to $220, I'm still way ahead. And I think one of the questions is let me just talk about this for a second to address Bobby's question as best I can. I think one of the questions is, what's your time horizon? If you're investing and you're thinking, I'm not selling these shares for 10 years, which is my view. I'm 54. In theory, I'm retiring at 65. I can access my IRA with no penalty at 65. So maybe I'll sell some shares in 10 years, in 2030, to fund my comfortable retirement once my Tesla shares grow that much. If you're too nervous about the ups and downs, listen, stock markets fluctuate. Stock prices fluctuate. Whatever stock you buy, it can go up and it can go down. And Tesla is a highly volatile stock compared to some other stocks. If you want a stock that's not volatile, buy Coca-Cola or McDonald's. But if you want long-term gains, the question is, let's say you're investing $10,000 today. What do you want that $10,000 to be in 10 years? Well, if you're... this is why I don't think I should give investment advice, because I have a family member, a not close family member who was talking to, who was keeping all their money in the bank. And I said, well, you should at least put it in an S&P 500 index fund. Again, doing what I shouldn't do, giving investment advice. They put it in the S&P 500 index fund. 2 days later, the S&P 500 fell 2%, and they panicked and they took their money out. If you're going to be watching the stock price every day, then I don't think you should buy stock. I honestly, I don't watch this. You know, it's funny because I'm so into Tesla. The only reason I'm aware of the share price when I'm aware of it is because I'm on Twitter and people are talking about the share price when it goes up or it goes down. I do not look, I have probably owned somewhere in the ballpark of 20 different stocks and 10 different mutual funds or something like that in multiple my portfolios and family portfolios. And I couldn't tell you what, even Amazon, which is my second largest holding, I think Amazon, last I looked, Amazon was around $3,200 a share, and that's a guess. I don't know what Amazon, did Amazon split? I don't even know. I think Apple split, but I don't own Apple. So I don't look at daily stock prices. I don't look at weekly stock prices. You know, as best as possible, I try not to look at the stock prices, you know, unless something comes up and I either, you know, need to do a transaction or something happens. So if your time horizon is 10 years down the road, then don't look at the daily stock prices, then you don't have anything to worry about. And then the question is, which stock am I going to invest in, or stocks am I going to invest in that are going to give me a really good long run return? And I would put it this way. Somebody asked this question on Twitter. If you could go back to when you were 18 years old, which for me is 36 years ago, and you could say 3 words and only 3 words to your 18-year-old self, what would those 3 words be? And my answer was buy Microsoft stock. Okay? And I didn't say buy Tesla stock. Why didn't you say buy Tesla stock? Well, you know, you'll see in a minute. And somebody said you should have said buy Apple stock. Now, in 1984, when I was 18, Microsoft wasn't even publicly traded yet. It was a company that was known, but you couldn't buy stock in it yet, at least not as a private investor. Apple was already publicly traded. So if I had bought Apple in 1984, it's up about 1,000x. So if I bought 10,000 shares of Apple, sorry, if I bought $10,000 worth of Apple, let's go with 1,000. If I bought $1,000 worth of Apple in 1984, it would be worth over $1 million today. It's up 1,000x. You wouldn't be able to buy Microsoft in 1986, but if you bought $1,000 worth of Microsoft in 1986, you could buy Apple the same year. It'd be roughly the same numbers. Apple would be $1 million from 1,000. Microsoft is up over 2,000x. It'd be $2 million. So if your plan is to invest and hold it for the long term and you're not worrying about daily ups and downs, then the question is, what companies are likely to grow a lot over the next 10 years? So Netflix seems likely to grow. Amazon seems likely to grow. I think that for Netflix and Amazon, the growth is already priced in. The reason why I think Tesla, one of the reasons why I think Tesla is a good long-term investment is because there's this huge volume of Tesla Q, FUD. For some reason, the mainstream media constantly targets Tesla and says bad things about Tesla. And there's all these people who think they have fears for Tesla's long-term value, and they listen to this nonsense. This is another future video I'm going to make, because I want to tear apart the Tesla Q FUD story. So they'll say something like, well, there's not enough demand. Tesla doesn't have enough demand. I'm going to say this as an example. This is for properly valuing Tesla, and this is a criticism of people who are pro-Tesla as well. You will see people say the EV market share is growing this much, and Tesla's share of the EV market will be this. And I've said this many times. I'm going to say it again. There is no electric vehicle market. There is only a vehicle market. Almost everyone who owns a Tesla or an electric vehicle today used to own an ICE vehicle, or still owns an ICE vehicle, an internal combustion engine vehicle, if you don't know what ICE is. So if instead of thinking what share, you know, how much is the EV market, it's like if they're making it more complicated than it needs to be. Instead of thinking, well, the EV share of the EV market is growing, and this is Tesla's share of the EV market projected, you don't need to think about that. The vehicle market is monstrously huge. Okay, there are 2 billion vehicles that need to be replaced. If you believe in Tesla, and this is a question, you either believe in Tesla or you don't believe in Tesla. If you think Teslas aren't that great, they're not that special, there's nothing special about them, I'd rather have I drive a Volkswagen Passat. comparably available. The Model 3 was just coming out. I couldn't get one. It was too expensive. I bought a Volkswagen, and I don't drive a lot of miles, so I'm not really the compelling case for an EV yet. If you believe that Teslas are better than ICE vehicles, and I don't think there's any question about that, by the way. The Tesla Model S is the best sedan that's ever been made. The 2012 Tesla Model S is the best sedan that was ever made other than a Tesla. Maybe the Porsche Taycan is close, but it's like 3 times as much money as what the 2012 Tesla Model S cost. But if in today's world, the long range, I'm not a performance guy, okay? So the long range Tesla Model S for $75,000 is the best sedan you can buy. Period. It is the best sedan. There is nothing comparable to a Tesla Model S sedan. Okay. If you want, I'm not going to talk about the Model X because I don't really, let's just go with the Model Y. The Wall Street Journal, in an article written by a journalist who a little over a year ago said Tesla's growth story was over. Charlie Grant said that the Model Y is the best car in the world. Okay? So these vehicles, the cost of operation is so low that if you own the vehicle for 5 years, you save so much money. The convenience of being able to charge in your garage and never going to a gas station again, and you go on a long trip, you have to stop at a supercharger, big whoop. If you drive a lot of miles, if you routinely drive 500 miles, once a week, then okay, maybe an EV is not for you. But if you drive 500 miles once a month, well then, how many times would you have stopped at a gas station versus how many times are you going to stop at a supercharger when you can charge in your garage? I have to get an oil change right now, and I've been putting it off. You never have to get an oil change. You never have to replace a muffler. There's so many things that go wrong with ICE vehicles that don't go wrong with EVs. Your typical ICE vehicle lasts 150,000 miles. Teslas are lasting 300, 500,000 miles, maybe 1 million miles. Fantastic. So, if you believe in Tesla, then you should believe that Tesla is going to grow. And you should, the growth path is monstrously huge because we've got 2 billion vehicles to replace. So let's say I'm predicting in 2030, Tesla will sell 20 million vehicles, or 40x the number of vehicles they're selling in 2020. That's 40x growth. That's a lot of growth. And then Tesla Energy, we're not even talking about Tesla Energy. Just on the vehicle side, 40x growth in 10 years. I want to invest in that. If my time horizon is 10 years out, I want to invest in that. And so the question is, the big auto companies are going to come out with EVs that are competing with Tesla. No, they're not competing. This is why the fact that there's no EV market matters. If some other car company comes out with a great EV that's comparable to a Tesla, it doesn't take sales away from Tesla. It takes sales away from other ICE vehicles. This is the big misunderstanding. If the Audi e-tron was good, it would take sales away from Audis. If the Volkswagen ID3 and ID4 are good, and I actually think that Volkswagen ID3 and ID4 are pretty good vehicles. They don't have the performance characteristics, but they're reasonably priced, whatever. They're going to take sales away from regular Volkswagens. No one who is thinking about buying a Model 3 is saying, I think I'll take this Volkswagen that has less range and less performance and isn't as good and doesn't have self-driving and doesn't have the Tesla supercharger network. No, you're not losing sales to other EVs. Every EV replaces an ICE vehicle, and every robo-taxi replaces 5 ICE vehicles. That's where it's going. Okay, sorry. So then you got the Tesla Energy story, which if Tesla makes 1 million power walls that cost $5,000 each, that's $5 billion in revenue. And I think they're going to make a lot. And by 2030, how many power walls is Tesla going to make? How many megapacks? How many power packs? The dollars per kilowatt hour, the dollars per terawatt. I think there's this question of how much is Tesla valued at in dollars per gigawatt hour produced. And if Tesla, that they use, how are they able to convert gigawatt hours into revenue and profit? And Robotaxi makes the profit. That's when I talked about the 40x. If Robotaxi network goes live, that 40x is nothing. The profit story with Robotaxi is insane. Insane.
So, EVs need to make a cool sound with like gas cars. Sorry, I've been talking for a while. Most people don't have a house. They need to charge at a charging station. Most people who are buying Teslas have a house. So, people who are buying 25, 30, 40,000, most people are buying a car, have a house. Or they have an apartment or they have a condo, and we are seeing that charging stations, that condos and apartments are starting to deploy charging stations there for the property, for the vehicle owner, because it makes the property more attractive. It's happening. Tesla, which one's BYND? Is that the Chinese car company? I don't know what BYND is. Robo taxis will be a $5 trillion market. I think it might be bigger, Giannis. I think it actually might be bigger. Yeah, if you don't own a house, don't buy a $60,000 car. No, but we're also talking about $35,000 car. I think the Model 3 will eventually be $35,000, and the compact might be $25,000. I don't think we're going to be buying those. Beyond Meat. I got to look into Beyond Meat. I haven't tried it. I really should try that. Is that the Impossible Burger? Is that which one? I don't know which one's which one. I got to try those. If Robo-Taxi profits will be insane, then what will Robo-Taxi cost? Excellent question, Chip. A Robo-Taxi is going to cost more than $100,000. You won't buy a Robo-Taxi. My prediction is you will not buy a Robo-Taxi. Tesla will produce Robo-Taxis, keep them and operate them themselves. And I have a video about this. If you look at my videos, I have a video called Tesla Will Stop Selling Cars. The government is mandating sounds under 31 miles an hour. Other advanced graphene and other advanced carbon products stabilize the electric. So let me just talk about this really quickly. I see people asking, what about graphene? What about solid state? Tesla is going to achieve 400 watt hours per kilogram with a low-cost, high-volume manufacturing process. Solid state's irrelevant. Graphene is irrelevant. They're not going to be that much better. It's going to take so much research and so much cost to get them where they would need to be. I don't think it's going to matter. And let me talk about VTOL. I probably talked about this before, but the idea of a vertical takeoff and landing jet, air travel is going to become irrelevant with Hyperloop. Hyperloop is going to, and they're talking about Hyperloop. If you don't know this, Hyperloop is now being discussed, Tampa to Miami. There's an actual proposal. I think it might be Virgin. I forget who it is. Somebody is proposing building a Hyperloop from Tampa to Miami. If that happens, it's like all over. If somebody delivers a Hyperloop that works and is cost effective, air travel's done. Air travel's over. Because you can build a Hyperloop anywhere. With Boring Company tunnels, you can build a Hyperloop anywhere. Why would you fly on a plane when you can just go to the Hyperloop? It's over. Robo-taxis are subject to regulation. It's going to take time. We'll see about that. Florida is very pro robo-taxi. I will bet you China lets robo-taxi happen right away. This is one of those things, people criticize China all the time. China is very friendly to EVs, and I bet they'll be very friendly to robo-taxis. They're just, I hate to say it, they got better, people criticize China's government. They got better government than we do right now. And I'm not talking about Republican or Democrat. I'm saying both. Cybertruck's proposed starting prices are so low. Any chance the price will dip significantly more once released? No, I think that they might not sell the single motor. I have a theory. I haven't sold the rear wheel drive. I think the shorter range, was it the standard range plus Model Y, hasn't been released yet. I think they may not sell the single motor Cybertruck. I think that I've heard the demand for the single motor Cybertruck is really low. I've heard that something like 80 or 90% of demand is for dual motor and tri-motor. So they might not make single motor Cybertrucks, so the bottom end might be $50,000. Miami to Tampa. Yeah, it's Google it. Do a Google search for Hyperloop Tampa. You'll see it. You will still need to fly over the oceans. No, you can tunnel under the oceans and you can take Starship over the oceans. And what happens to the airline industry if the only routes they have left are over the oceans? And why would you want to fly over the ocean when you can take a Hyperloop? If you calculate the Powerwall revenues in the USA, you get about $100,000 annual revenue with each megawatt you connect to the grid. Interesting. I think you're talking about V2G? I don't know what you're talking about. Do you think Nikola will make it to the lockup date? I don't care about Nikola. I don't talk about Nikola or Nikola, whatever it is. Hyperloop between, I don't think they would need to be Hyperloops between Hawaiian Islands. They would just be loops. I don't think they need that speed. I think 120 miles an hour is plenty, but I don't know Hawaii that well. Half my orders plus for Cybertruck. Half my orders for Cyber. What do you, Thaddeus? Are you talking about your own orders, or are you talking about orders that people are tracking? Is someone tracking Cybertruck orders and half of them are single motor? I heard 80 or 90% were dual motor and tri-motor. Mega Factory, what is that? Municipalities and company fleets will buy plenty of Cybertruck single motor. I don't know. I mean, I think the thing is that the dual motor Cybertruck has more range. I think if they offer a single motor Cybertruck with extended range, if they offer a better battery pack, I'm going to talk about Cybertruck in my next video, so I'll save that. Elon has hyped up FSD too much. The cars will not be able to drive when there's snow and rain. Yes, they will. They'll be fine. That's got it. There's going to be an easy solution for that, not a problem. I do want to talk about this. I mentioned this earlier. Something completely. Can Tesla avoid S&P 500 inclusion to avoid too much influence by Wall Street? I don't think S&P 500 inclusion has any influence on Tesla. I heard Elon gave 4680 cell priority to Texas, not Berlin. I think it's both. I don't think there's a priority. I think it's both. I think the question is whether the 4680 cells, the big question about 4680 is whether they will make LFP, lithium iron phosphate, and nickel manganese in the 4680 format. I think the answer is yes. I think that all battery cell production for Tesla will go to 4680 tablets over time. It'll take a couple of years. We need to keep Elon safe and sound. That would be nice. If you read the Culture series, Elon's favorite series of novels is called The Culture series by Ian Banks. And I think Elon is a creature from an alien civilization. He has a drone, an invisible drone protecting him. Lithium extraction for clay has actually not been achieved yet. I don't know. Looking here, will Robo-taxi customers be able to select a car on the network for work, gaming, sleep car, etc.? Yes, absolutely. I think you will have long-range robo-taxis. I think you will have short-range robo-taxis. I think you will have robo-taxis that are designed for the Hyperloop and for regular loops. I think you will have 4-passenger robo-taxis and single-passenger robo-taxis and 12-passenger robo-taxis. I think there's going to be all kinds of robo-taxis out there. There will be mass transit robo-taxis. It's going to be amazing. It'll be fantastic. Elon is probably, I have a video. So one of my videos is that I think Elon is an alien, so it's a theory, or he's from outside the simulation. What if Elon was from outside the simulation? Thoughts on SpaceX signing deal with Pentagon for 1-hour transport of weapons? I don't think it's surprising. I mean, they're already a supplier to the military, so why wouldn't they supply that to the military? Absolutely. He is kind of superhuman. LeBron James is superhuman. Jimmy Butler's superhuman. I'll need a Cybertruck robo-taxi with a trailer hitch to get me and my trailer to job sites. I definitely think that that's going to be one of the most interesting. Maybe I'll put this in the Cybertruck video. The concept of Cybertruck as a robo-taxi, you know, how do if robo-taxis are going to be outrageously expensive because of the value of the software, how do contractors get their supplies to the job site? Because, you know, contractors are, you know, we're operating out of, you know, crappy old minivans. Are they going to be able to get a $150,000 Cybertruck? How is that going to work exactly? That's going to be a really, really interesting question. Will you have a tray in your garage and the Cybertruck pulls the tray onto the back of the truck and takes your tray to work and then drops it off and then comes back and picks you up at the end of the day? Really interesting question about how Cybertruck's going to work in a robo-taxi world. 16-passenger door-to-door van service called Earl here. I want to see those battery-powered and robo-taxi. Cybertruck at Home Depot rental. No, you need. Home Depot's not going to get to participate. The Heat are going to win tonight. Somebody asks Lakers or Heat tonight. For those who don't know, I'm a rabid Miami Heat fan. I moved here 9 years ago when the Knicks stunk, and I became a Miami Heat fan and was richly rewarded. And even in a bad year like last year, I loved watching the Miami Heat. I am hopeful that the Miami Heat will win tonight. And I think that although Lakers have two better players in LeBron James and Anthony Davis, the Heat are a better team. They have a more of a team mentality, and the team will beat. You could pull a tray onto a truck with a winch pretty easily. Yes. Warren, what company would you like to see Tesla acquire? I would like to see Tesla acquire Lyft. L-Y-F-T, Lyft. The Uber or Lyft, but Lyft would be cheaper. I think the knowledge and data that Lyft has about ride sharing could be very valuable for the Robo taxi setup. And let me touch on that. I don't think Dragic is playing tonight, unfortunately. I would love him to play, but I don't think he will. FSD version 4. I should make a video about this in the future. The FSD 3 chip came out, I think, in 2019 and has not been installed in many. It's almost like they're not making the FSD 3 chip, and I think they're in every new vehicle made. But I think there's still a lot of people who have version 2.5 of the FSD chip who haven't gotten their upgrade to the FSD 3 chip, and I have a theory as to why. And the theory is that Tesla is on the verge of mass producing the FSD version 4 chip, which will be, you can slot it, you can replace 2.5 with that. And the FSD 4 chip is going to be a monstrous improvement over the FSD 3 chip. It's going to be 3 times as good. They talked about it at Autonomy Day. They said they'd been working on the FSD 4 chip for 2 years already. So 2021, we're going to see the FSD version 4 chip. And Elon has had a couple of tweets recently where he talked about the integer 8 code. It's an integer 8 chip. But the FSD chip in the car is an integer 8 chip, and the Dojo chips are floating point 16. I think the FSD version 4 chip is coming soon, and it's going to be way better. So, you know, and that the FSD 3 chip is already good enough, but the FSD 4 chip will offer some advantages that I can't anticipate. So, is it okay to ask or comment on tech? Sure, comment on tech, Jim. Whatever you got to say. What about glass batteries? I think that advanced technology batteries are nice, but I don't think, until somebody comes up with a way, somebody else is going to have to do that. I don't think Tesla is worried. I think Tesla has achieved the level of battery technology necessary to replace the global fleet and enable grid storage. That further improvements will be valuable, that will make things better. But it was just a question of getting to a certain threshold in terms of cost per kilowatt hour. And I think Tesla vehicles at the current cost per kilowatt hour are already better. But further improvements just further enable EVs replacing the fleet and grid storage and solar and wind replacing fossil fuels. And you know, like for me, where I live, the air is already clean. I have relatively clean air. Think about people who live in China. Think about people who live in India, in big cities in Africa, and other countries where they're poor and there's a lot of diesel and they have polluted air and lots of people die and lots of people get severe respiratory illnesses. How much water pollution there is from all this fossil fuel use. I'm not even a CO2 guy. I don't care about CO2. I think the CO2 story is irrelevant. Okay, but if you believe in it, great. I don't want to argue with you about CO2. It doesn't matter. There are so many other pollutants that come out of fossil fuels that we need to get rid of them. We want cleaner air. We want cleaner water. We can get there whether we care about CO2 or not. So, so new technologies like solid state, like glass, like graphene, great. If somebody wants to invest the money and somebody comes up with something that's better than what we have now, and they can make it manufactured at scale for low cost, great, do it. I think Elon has an AI chip, and I don't think Elon has a Neuralink yet, unless he's an alien. Yeah, I think Tesla 4680 basically achieves the goals that people have talked about with glass, graphene, and solid state. You know, unless somebody does better, and what they're doing now will improve. That by 2023 or 2024, they're going to have 400 watt hours per kilogram at below $100 a kilowatt hour in cost. This is going to be phenomenal. And the improvements aren't going to stop. I wouldn't be surprised if they achieve 500 watt hours per kilogram within 10 years. That by 2030, we're talking about 500 watt hours per kilogram without going to graphene or glass or solid state. So who cares? How do you transition all the Lyft drivers to Teslas without pissing off all the customers? I don't think you I don't know the answer to that question. That's a good question, Amato. I don't know. I don't think they necessarily transition the Lyft drivers to Teslas right away. I think the point is to have access to the data and the software and the knowledge of some of the key employees. They might be able to get there just by hiring key employees, but I think the data is valuable. Warren, what's your price target for Tesla in like 2023? That's going to be this week. That's going to be my that's going to be my third video this week. I haven't figured out the price target for 2023 yet, or 2022. I'm revamping my price targets based on Battery Day, and I need to work on that. If I was Ford or GM, I would be freaking out. They're dead. Let's just talk about that for a second. Legacy Auto's dead. Okay, they don't know they're dead yet, but they're dead. There aren't enough EVs being produced to totally replace production of ICE vehicles now. But ICE vehicle production is going to decline more and more and more. And their business models are predicated on growth, and their debt, the money that they owe, is predicated on some level of growth. They will not be able to make their debt payments. Within 5 years, they're all going to be bankrupt. And some of them will be bailed out. This is like I'm sorry. I'm going to get slightly political just for a second, then I'm going to back off it for a second. If you think that Joe Biden is going to let ICE industry fail, just watch what he said in the debate. He bragged about saving ICE car plants. We want the ICE car plants to die. If you're supporting Biden, you're supporting a politician who wants to keep the ICE plants going. And Trump is the same. I'm sorry, but off politics. I'm sorry, I slipped out. I shouldn't have done that. I apologize. They're both bad. What do you think about a 100 mile per gallon ICE vehicle? I don't think it's going to happen. Legacy automakers are dead, but they don't know it yet. They are desperate in trying to partner. Partnering won't work. Thaddeus, you're already... I tried driving Lyft. I didn't get it. I tried it. I think I just wasn't in the right place. I did it right near my home, and I think there's not enough business here. Yes, I believe that there will be government bailouts for legacy automakers, not just in the US. I think it'll happen in Europe too, and it's going to be a disaster. And the government will fund the legacy automakers' efforts to make EVs that won't be as good and won't sell. Warren, this is another question. Somebody asked if I've ever considered buying call options. I do not do options. I buy and hold. I don't want to get... That's a long conversation about options that I won't do here. Cybertruck will stop F-Series of being the best-selling vehicle for 40 plus years in a row. Interesting, William. William says Cybertruck will stop F-Series from being the best-selling vehicle for 40 plus years in a row. I don't think so. Not yet. Elon said they're hoping to achieve a run rate of 250,000 Cybertrucks a year. That wouldn't be enough to displace all the F-Series. Let's see, 900,000 a year. Okay, so we've gone 2 hours. I want to thank everybody for watching. I've run out of good material. I mean, I could talk forever, but I don't want to make this video too long. What do I think about the slow growth of solar roofs of Tesla? I think we're gonna see radical expansion of solar roof any day now. So the problem with options is transaction costs and timing. I don't like market timing. Options aren't for buy and hold. I'm a buy and hold investor, and that's it. So thank you everyone for watching. I'm done. I should be doing this next week. I'm taking a vacation sometime in mid-November where I'll be skipping a week, but I should be here every Sunday. And I think next week's going to be better because I'm going to have made a few videos talking about 2022 and 2023 and maybe 2024 plus Cybertruck. I'm going to try to do some short videos, and we'll have a lot to talk about next week. So thanks everyone for watching. Merch, Patreon, please support me on Patreon. Buy a t-shirt. This is my favorite t-shirt. This one's my favorite t-shirt. Elon Fan Club. Oh, thank you, Jesse. Oh, great. Please put that in the comments, Jesse. Thank you. Honestly, this is my favorite t-shirt. I wear this one a lot. I got to buy more of these. My cabinets, my drawers, my dresser is becoming full of my own t-shirts. I can't help it. Whenever I make a design, I buy a sample for myself. I got like 3 more coming. So anyway, thank you everyone for watching. Stay tuned. Cybertruck video should be like Tuesday, 2023, 2024. I should be able to get 3 videos during the week. And maybe one Saturday. One of them will be Saturday. And then, can you do them tabless? No, I can't. So thanks everyone for watching, and I'll stay with the chat for 5 more minutes. I think the chat goes about 5 minutes after I hang up. So thanks everyone.